Motion made by Mr. Taylor to move text amendments 1023, 1123, and 1223 minus the 1 mile restriction to public hearing. And the second was Mr. Akers? Is that right, Mr. Akers? Yes. Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay?
Nay.
Mr. Taylor, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Black?
Nay.
Mr. Underwood?
Aye.
Mr. Akers?
Aye.
Mr. Seeley?
Nay.
And I vote aye. That motion carries 4-2. So we are going to advertise for public hearing September.
Yes, sir.
First meeting? Second meeting?
Second probably works better.
What date is that?
That would be our normal public hearing schedule.
Okay. And the second meeting in September is the 23rd. It's my grandmother's birthday. Okay. So we're going to advertise move September 23rd. Thank you, Mr. Fincham. That takes care of agenda item number 6. Agenda item number 8, since we skipped, we did 7 earlier. Mr. Shebel, are you going to handle agenda item number 8? Now, with the board's indulgence, normally on an agenda item like this, Mr. Shebel would make a report to the board, and then the board would make a determination based on his report. However, I believe that there are several extenuating circumstances, so if it's all right, we're going to ask the property owner or the possible building owner and the builder to add additional information for our understanding. Mr. Shebel.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, good evening. At the end of May, I received a notice from the planning department that they had received a request for a point source discharge in the Woodford area. They asked me to review that and forward notes to the Board of Supervisors. In doing so, we've looked at this of what's been before the board in the past. The Thompsons have been here and asked for a similar situation, and as this continues, there definitely needs to be something put in place for the board to be able to control when, where, why, and how come this can be done. My report's strictly based on the facts of these types of systems and have nothing to do with the particular applicant. We actually have another one that's coming through, and we're waiting on that to happen in Mr. Black's area that could possibly happen. So knowing that we've got these out here, we've kind of put together a recommendation, or at least a plan for the board to at least look at. This particular request was made through Whitaker Soils and Design to install a system. There had been an alternative waste system that had been approved, and a drain field site was located. During construction, the soil scientist said that the drain field became damaged, and they revoked the permit. As such, he redesigned another system that would require a point source discharge to this property. Looking at that, there's a lot of concerns that happen with that. One is the number of properties that this discharge would have to cross from that actual discharge before it actually hit a stream. Looking at other point sources, typically you try to go to a waterway as quickly as possible. And this is almost just over 3 miles going across 12 different properties and through another property's pond prior to hitting the final waterway. So that was definitely a consideration and a concern. Alternative discharge treatment systems, as they're defined, are actually where they have a point source discharge, where you actually have to go through a treatment system and discharges into either a dry ditch, a wet ditch, a drainage area, compared to a normal alternative system or a conventional drain field. You actually would put into some sort of a low pressure drain field type system. Talking with the health department, monitoring typically can become an issue. Homeowners typically that have these first put in understand that they have to have them. As the house is sold over the life of that home, people don't realize that the actual upkeep of these type of units, what it's going to cost to maintain them over that period of time. Maintenance becomes an issue of them not actually being maintained. DEQ themselves say that they issue a 5-year permit. However, they don't even send letters out to say that the permit's up because they don't have staff to be able to say that your permit's expired. And sometimes they go 7, 8 years before a permit is reissued and looked at. So there's issues from that. Staffing and budgetary effects. The health department said, currently that they would probably be able to monitor these types of systems. However, as that we continue to get more of these systems, it puts more burden on them, and it's not something that they monitor on a regular basis. Intermittent usage of these types of systems are an issue. Don't know if it will be at this particular location, but you get somebody that comes in and stays there for a couple months and then leaves for 2-3 weeks and comes back. These systems don't do very good with that. Public safety is always an issue. Any kind of problems that you have with these systems and in maintaining them, the implications of the property of a treated discharge could have on any kind of a waterway or the neighbors. When you see the effluent on most of these systems, as long as the system is working appropriately, they're doing a good job. And they put out a reasonable quality of wastewater. If you were to compare that to our wastewater treatment plant, 100 of these units, if you average 200 gallons a day, 20,000 gallons, puts out more pollutant than our wastewater treatment plant putting 500,000 gallons a day. So if you look at the pollutant characteristics of this type of systems, these systems, compared to our wastewater treatment plant, there's a big difference in the quality that comes out of those. When we looked at the environmental concerns and we looked at the natural resources section of our 2010 comprehensive plan, one of the goals of the plan was to identify, conserve, and protect the important natural resources through the land and use of the planning and zoning environment programs. I believe that these types of systems can have a detriment to any kind of our resources when it comes to natural waterways, and think that needs to be addressed. And I kind of get into recommendations, and it's more of laying out some kind of a zoning examination conditions of when these can be put in, how they can be put in. I think the last thing the county wants is these just to pop up all over the county and create a lot of issues. Anytime that you look to do any kind of a water withdrawal, the health department requires that you can't have any kind of a discharge like this 1 mile upstream and 5 miles downstream. So there are implications to that. You also don't want, let's just take a Lake Land or Lake Caroline. You got those waterways with a lot of homes, and you end up putting these in all around there. These kind of discharges, if they go and are not caught and maintained, these things could actually have a problem and start discharging. And normally you don't know there's a problem until there starts being a notice of an odor or a lot of nutrients is being discharged, and you see a lot of growth around those areas. So I definitely think that there needs to be some way to look at these systems of when they can be put into place.
Mr. Cheeble, minor technical question. Why couldn't they use something like the Dawn wastewater system, the alternative systems used in Dawn?
They could, as long as there was a drain field site acceptable for that type of system. This is a small treatment system. It's a fairly robust system. It's not a very inexpensive system that puts into place. So it actually goes through a treatment process and then through UV.
So they could do it if they had enough land?
The discharge is what really becomes, even our Dawn system discharges to a drain field underground. It's not a point source discharge.
Right. Well, I'm just trying to figure out alternative systems like that are possible.
My understanding is that the soil scientist has looked at all the other methods of being able to discharge underground, and it basically has come up with having to do a point source discharge at this time just because the soil was unsuitable.
Okay. All right. Maybe we should talk to Mrs. Berriman or Ms. Berriman and the builder for a second. Would you by any chance be Rob? Oh, you're the one that sent the email? Yes, sir. Okay, you come forward. Yes, sir. Oh, I got the email. I did. You didn't? I did. You did? Okay. All right, Rob, and I'm sorry because I didn't click to the page to get your last name. So
Rutherford.
That's okay. I like to be formal.
Thank you.
So, you sent an email, Rutherford.
Yes, sir.
You sent an email to Mr. Fincham at 10 o'clock this morning regarding an interpretation or an opinion you got from the State's Attorney General.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that's just to define who you are and why you're here. Of course, you're the one who built the house.
I learned about that opinion yesterday, sir.
That's fine. You're the one who built the house.
We're building the house.
Your firm,
Yes, sir.
okay, which is Nelson Homes.
Yes, sir.
You were responsible for the drain field.
Yes, sir.
Okay, tell us what happened.
From my understanding, what happened, there was a crane on site in January and also a well truck on site. And the lot is about an acre and a little bit. And I believe that through the drain field area was 36 by 36. It was going to be a sand-bound drain field, a Presby system, they call it. I believe that one of those two trucks ran through the side of that drain field area, placing 6-inch ruts in it, making it unusable. Now, of course, I went there today and looked at it again. It looks great. You know, my hopes would be that I could get the appropriate people back out there and go back to the Presby system. You know, this spring was terrible weather, and everything looked terrible. But if that doesn't work, the only opportunity we have is a system that's like being described. Now, the system that we're going to actually use does have 150 foot of French drain in it, so the water does have a very good opportunity to get displaced in the ground. Only during extremely wet times might there be any discharge.
Okay. The crane that caused this
Yes, sir.
issue was
Subcontract.
by you?
Yes, sir. Oh, actually by another company that did the set.
You're the general contractor.
Yes.
You sub to everybody.
You're
You're responsible for everything.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mrs. Berriman, can I ask you a question, please? Now, are you inconvenienced at all by the fact that you're not in your house?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Very inconvenient.
So you're actually renting or doing something else?
Yes, I'm renting right now, but I'm on a month-to-month lease because I'm supposed to have been out that house in January.
Okay, so you've had 7 months of additional
Yes,
rental for that?
additional income going out that wasn't supposed to be going out. It's a big mess. I'm
Okay.
just ready to move into my house,
Understand.
get it done and over with.
Without getting into your business at all,
Yes, sir.
I would imagine you paid some money on the house
Yes, I
already?
have.
Okay.
Yes, I have. And I'm a single mother of 2 boys.
Okay. Well, and I would also imagine that you have a little bit more to pay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, understand at least from my perspective, I would like to do everything possible that I can do to help you.
Yes, sir.
We have to figure out how we do that.
Yes.
So that's kind of where we are. We want to help you. The builder's another story, but we want to help you.
Okay.
Okay? Mr. Taylor, I believe this is in the Port Royal District?
Woodford.
Yes, it is, Mr. Chairman. I would certainly like for us to come up with a method whereby we could assist Mrs. Berriman. I guess when I think about the total picture, before Mrs. Berriman purchased that property, there was an old rundown house on it that looked terrible. I have seen her home. She has purchased a very nice home. The property looks, you know, much better.
This house, this property you and I discussed before?
I believe it is.
Okay.
I believe it is. But it looks nice, and I guess my concern for Mrs. Berriman is none of this is any of her doing. You know, she's someone who is a citizen. She's someone who is a taxpayer. She's someone who went into a venture in good faith, and she has. It's just very unfortunate. So I don't want us to do something that's going to create an issue for Caroline County down the road, but at the same time, I don't want to create an issue for Mrs. Berriman right now. And I believe that we are bright enough up here to figure a way to work with her and have her be able to move into her house and not destroy the county in the process. So that's
Okay.
I want to help.
Mr. Rutherford, you can see my frustration in that you have put us in a bad situation.
Yes, sir.
It may not have been your fault. It may have been just the crane operator's first day on the job, but you're the contractor. You're the general contractor. You're responsible for everything. So now I'm really mad at you.
Yes, sir.
Because now one of our citizens doesn't have a house. She's spending money that she can't have. I got 5 other people who are saying, I don't think I necessarily want to do this for everybody. So what do I do now?
Sir, my hopes would be that I could go back to the original system now that I reviewed the site again, and that would be my hopes for her and me and the board and the citizens. But in a situation where nothing else is possible, our plans are to do everything we could to not have any discharge off that site, but when it's extremely wet, there might be. And if the board could see clear to enabling us to do that much more expensive system, which I'm helping Ms. Berryman with, of course, and to get that done, to get that house completed. I'm hoping to do the standard system that we did already have designed. But we need to move forward.
But did I hear you just say you're going to pay for the rent that she had for the 7 months she was out?
No, sir, I've been paying a lot of extra cost of Ms. Berryman's.
Oh, I didn't hear you say that? I should have heard you say that, but I didn't hear you say that. That's between you and her.
That's exactly right.
So you don't have to, I don't have to hear that, but she does. She needs to hear that.
I've been helping Ms. Berryman all along.
Okay. Other questions of Ms. Berryman or of Mr. Rutherford? Mr. Black?
Yeah, so your first priority is going to go back. I think I would be more comfortable with that too, because I know in my district, and I think in Mr. Akers' district as well, we have the lake districts, and in living in Lake Landor or Lake Caroline, the idea of having the surface discharge is not something that, because this is talking about precedent here, and I mean, and it may be in Port Royal and so forth, but when we start talking about and we want to do everything to help the applicant, I understand that.
Yes, sir.
But we're starting talking about precedent, and the lifeblood of my district and Mr. Akers' district, as far as one of the big communities, is the lakes, the health of the lakes. And when Mr. Schiebel tells me, that what's coming out of those systems is, not the same as what's coming out of an Advantex or what he treats, then I've got some concerns. Is the Advantex system a possibility on this site?
Sure. There's several different systems that the engineer can pick from, and it has to meet all the Virginia Department of Health's requirements as well as the DEQ review.
Right.
So these are very, very controlled situations. So it's not that it's not being looked at. We're going to actually have a dosed discharge pump station to the treatment plant so it doesn't get overwhelmed when somebody uses a lot of water. After the treatment plant, there's going to be a sand filter. After the sand filter, there's going to be a UV filter. And then it's going to be discharged into a long French drain.
And I understand that's your current plan. I understand that, like with Vail. I'm asking you the Advantex system, the ones that have to go through the soil and so forth.
Yes.
The alternative systems that are and lots in Lake Landor and Lake Caroline that don't perk. We have a lot of lots down there that don't perk, and they have those Advantex systems. I've got one at my house.
Sure.
Is that a possibility on this lot? And I'm not talking about the surface discharge. I'm talking about an Advantex system.
The system that was designed to work on that lot is called a Presby system, and it's much better than Advantex from the point of view there's no electricity required, and there's only monitoring required. So the maintenance is extremely less. It's 8-inch pipes wrapped with a certain kind of material that captures the bacteria. There's free air in it, so while it's not active and have blowers that have to be maintained, it's a very passive treatment system. And that's what we wanted in there because it's affordable. It does a great job for what it does. It is embedded in sand. If it does fail, you can dig it up, replace the sand, put more down. There's something about that soil, though, where if there's a rut in it, it's no good anymore. I think Mr. Taylor has some property close by, and he has a septic system there for quite a while, and with no issues at all. And I'm thinking, when I look at that dirt, it doesn't look that bad. And we're just stuck between this 6-inch rut in this system. If we can go back to it, we already got a permit. It's a treated system, passive, totally passive, which is best, and it will do the job.
So are you willing to do that first?
Oh, absolutely. The
Okay.
material's all sitting on the job site for the last 5 months trying to build it.
Okay.
Everything was there.
All right.
I mean, I think I would feel more comfortable with that.
See, he's got to go back to the Department of Health, DEQ.
Yes, sir.
Right. Both of them.
I'm sorry, the Health Department, to try to get a septic permit?
Well, we have the permit to try to get them to allow us to use the field.
Okay,
Again, to relook at
Again.
it, now that it's dry and stable.
okay.
From the spring, that's when we started looking at the
Because
weather.
this system you propose here
Yeah,
requires a lot of maintenance.
More maintenance.
And it may get, it may work fine.
It
A
will.
year or two, you'll be gone. Ms. Berryman will say, well, we signed off on all the things. We did the punch list, everything works. And then she's sitting there going, oh, wow, it doesn't work anymore. So,
there are requirements from the DEQ and from
right, you gotta
Virginia Department of
have a
Health for
6-month
monitoring
maintenance
it.
contract and all that.
That's
So-
right, and it's got to be recorded in her deed, so those things get passed along. Anytime you have anything mechanical, you have issues. The systems that they're looking at using are common parts, common things. The supply houses sell the parts. They're used in a lot of places. So the only real special item that we're having is the UV light. The rest of it's a common treatment plant that's everywhere, that people use it to discharge into the ground.
But, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I hear what the board is saying, but if you go back to the state and the state says no, you are no further along than you are right now. We need to find a way that when you leave here tonight, you have an alternative that works. Now, I'm all for you going back to the state and seeing if they will really reevaluate the drain field system and give you what you need to do the permits that you need. That would be just great. But if you go to them and they say no, you wasted your time here tonight. We need to give you an alternative if that doesn't work. And it's common sense because it's obviously cheaper. So you're going to do everything you can to get her the best system that she can. But if we just leave it at that, if we just tell you to go back to the state and get them to approve it, or we could say to you as the builder, you messed up her drain field. You owe her a house. But we don't have the authority to do that. But we do have the authority to give you permission through a special exception to use that source point system if that turns out to be your only option. If that turns out to be your only option, then you have purchased a house that's been sitting there for months. And it's a special exception, so we're not setting a precedence because special exceptions are acted on their own merit. We can look at this particular situation. We can look at the particular monies that's been spent. We can look at the particular circumstances, and we can choose to give you the authority to do that source point system. And if in 3 years it doesn't work, I'm sorry, but we will have done everything we can. And that's what I want us to do.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Akers?
I don't know whether the board has any other comments, but I'm ready to make a motion, and I think that we can include in the motion that this type of operation be the last resort. Everything else has fails. Yeah.
Let me ask Mr. Underwood a question or two.
Mr.
Rutherford.
So when you look at this point source alternative system, did you look at other options as well?
Professional engineers have to design those systems, so the soil scientist brings the results from the health department and the things that he finds. They design a system for it. And, my goal is to design an affordable system that's going to be approvable, for the DEQ or for whoever's got to approve it. Currently, that's what they came back with me to.
Let me go back to my original question.
Yes, sir.
Did you look at other alternative sources other than this point source discharge system?
I can't look at, I know.
Or did you have people look at, all right, you're the responsible entity to make sure that she has a working septic system.
Yes, sir.
Because of whatever happened, we're not there.
Exactly.
So someone has to take responsibility and say, I'm going to look at what alternatives are available. I'm going to talk to someone about what's available. So my question again, Has there been alternatives looked at other than the point source discharge system?
The engineers told me that's what we needed to do.
Okay.
And so, no,